everyone. Welcome back to the ASPA podcast. My name is Karen Neckelman, and I am the marketing coordinator here at ASPA. Our guest today is Jessica Bennington. Hi, Jessica. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Good morning.
So, Jessica is the executive director of HR at the Ogden City School District, right?
Yes,
Okay, and today we will be chatting about work-life integration and how to foster an environment that honors diverse perspectives, needs, and experiences.
I'm
So,
excited.
yeah, thank you. So, to start, Jessica, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes, I've been in education now for just over 17 years. I started as a student custodian in the district I work at and became an elementary teacher. I was a junior high classroom management instructional coach, an assistant principal, a principal, and now I am in my ninth year of human resources with the Ogden School District.
That's great. So, to start with the conversation, so when developing a system that honor employee work-life integration, how can districts get as much employee feedback as possible?
Yeah, so I know that sometimes people get nervous to send out surveys because people get surveys a lot, right? You go to Starbucks, you get a survey. You go to wherever you are going or an event and you're giving your feedback, and people are afraid that by sending a survey, they're going to tire people out or they're not. What we have learned is really it's not that employees don't want to fill out a survey. They don't get survey fatigued. They get what's called action fatigued. So if they fill out a survey and they see that that survey enacts action, they're more likely to fill it out. So we have gotten a lot of employee voice through surveys, and we follow that up with focus groups that I believe we're going to jump into and talk to a little bit about, as well as then co-designing solutions. And so we use employee voice at all three of those different stages.
Okay. And when you are interviewing employees as part of the focus group, how do you make sure each focus group has a similar experience across the district, and no matter who is asking the questions?
Oh, that is a great question. And that can be tricky if there's not a lot of work put into it on the front end. So once our employees fill out surveys, then we gather that information and we start to identify from each school and department. The schools and departments identify who do they want to send to the district campus to be part of these focus groups. And we have a very scripted process. It might sound silly, but that's how we make sure that no matter who the facilitator is, that person's going to ask that group the same guiding questions. The questions that we're asking of these focus groups are tied to the survey. So, for example, if an employee documents that pretty low that they are struggling with workload balance and they're working a lot past their contract time, we dive in and we create questions that every focus group is going to be asked. So it doesn't matter what school you're at, it doesn't matter what department you're in, the facilitator is going to ask those same questions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the importance of that, it's not only important for the focus groups to have the same experience, it's also important for us to be able to then capture that data because if they have the same questions, we can identify trends. And then at that point, we can begin figuring out what comes next. Um, to prepare our facilitators, we actually meet with them before we begin those focus groups. So the facilitator gets a guiding document that it explains everything. How do you welcome the focus group? There's an icebreaker. We talk about confidentiality, and then we begin the questions. Every facilitator gets to have a note taker because the facilitator needs to be able to be fully engaged in the discussion. We do not want a facilitator also having to take notes, so they have a note taker. And the note taker is trained and they have a guiding document that they fill that information out. Once the focus group is done, it usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour to engage and go through the questions. The facilitator and the note taker, they actually stay together. They'll excuse everyone, but while everything is fresh on their mind, they'll review those notes, they'll review what the focus groups talked about, and then they document their trends. So, what did they hear? because that makes it much quicker for us to be able to look at all the data. What are those trends that they found in that focus group?
Hmm. And what would you say you have learned after facilitating focus groups? Are there things that stand out that you can help others prepare for?
Yes, I would say my hardest part, and I know I have a couple colleagues that this was pretty tricky. When an employee is giving you their insight or their perception, sometimes we already have those resources to that's a solution to what their need is. They just didn't know about it. So the hardest part of being a facilitator is to not go into education mode. It's not a time for the facilitator to say, but wait, don't you know about this? Or wait, if you go here, we actually do have something to help with that. We're just in the facilitator has got to stay in the mindset of seek to understand, tell me more, and not get a barrier put up or start to feel frustrated or start to um, just become kind of lost in that conversation and wanting to really dive in and say, but we do have these things. Here's how
Mhm.
you do it. Because as a facilitator and as those who are looking at that data, if employees don't know a resource is there, that's a problem. So even though if there is a solution, don't talk about it then. That's how then we start to enact action. But if we start to educate during that focus group meeting, it's going to shut down the conversation. So that's I would say that is the hardest part as a facilitator is to not educate and just seek to understand.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So, and once you have gathered all the data from these focus groups across schools and departments, what do you do with that data?
All right. So first of all, we look for trends, and then we communicate it out. Part of that survey, everybody gets to be part of the survey. As we launch our employee engagement surveys, we're in like 96% of people now filling out our surveys, which is incredible. That's a very high amount of like teachers and staff that are filling those out, but it's because they see that it's being communicated to them. So after we're doing those focus groups, not everybody's part of those focus groups. That's a small group of people comparatively to all the employees. And so making sure that we're communicating. What is it that across the district we send it out to everybody? So we send it through emails. We just make sure to blast it out so that we're very transparent. Here's what we're hearing in the surveys. Here's the data that we're hearing in the focus groups so that everybody can still be part of it, even though they're not part of a focus group. So definitely communicating that data, communicating what's coming up next in a timeline. So, hey, here was when we launched our survey. Here's where the focus groups are. Schools do a really good job in departments of communicating with their staff of who's going to be part of those focus groups. So it's, hey, at our school, Jessica is going to go to the focus group. If you have ideas around these things that are going to be discussed, go give Jessica your thoughts. And then Jessica can take it. I'm putting myself in those shoes. Then that's how they can get their voice. But lots of communication. So it doesn't, it you're not left out if you are not participating in a focus group. And then we start to invite people to come to co-designing of solutions. So we get the survey information, we seek to understand because the survey is very vague. We need to go to the employees and talk to them. That's the focus groups to meet what does it mean when you're filling out a survey so that we can understand. And now that we have a better understanding of what's going on, let's start to co-design solutions. It's not the superintendent's job to figure out how to fix anything that needs to happen. It really is our employees. So we need to start to talk to them to co-design those solutions because we don't have all the answers. Employees know what they need.
So, and about co-designing solutions, what is that you do? And do you have some examples you can share with us?
Yeah, so I would say this is the most powerful part of the entire process, right? Sending out a survey, that's easy. Takes a little bit to design it, a little bit to send it out. Data is pretty easy to digest and to dissect and to analyze. The focus groups, they take some time. You're meeting with people, you're asking them questions, but again, it goes pretty quick. It's pretty smooth. We've done this now for 3 years, so we've got a good cycle going. The best part of the entire process, though, is getting together with employees to co-design those solutions. So what that looks like is we just throw it up on the board. What is it that employees are saying that they need? And how, let's brainstorm. Sky's the limit. If money was not involved, how do we solve this? So one example of that is paid time off. Um, some places already have paid time off. We used to have sick leave, personal leave, those different kind of allocations of leave. And what we heard in the focus groups was some employees saying, "Thank you for the leave, that's great, but I feel like I have to lie if I need to go somewhere. Like if my family's going on a trip, I feel like I have to lie to use my sick leave so that I can go on this trip. I don't want to lie, so then I don't go on a trip. Or now I've lied and I feel like a bad employee." That's not the intent of leave. So we brainstormed. What could we do? Sky's the limit. What could we do? And we landed on paid time off. It doesn't matter. We don't call it sick leave anymore. We don't call it any other special, personal, whatever. It's all just paid time off, and employees have the flexibility to use it. As we started to do that, of course, you think through finances. What is this going to take? How much is it going to cost? And we were shocked. It actually didn't cost us anything more. Employees, they like to come to work. They want to come to work. They're going to use their leave, but they don't use all of their leave. They do save it and roll it over to the next years to come. So that has been powerful. Another thing that we heard from employees was about professional development. They like to learn. They're lifelong learners, which is great because we're in the field of education. So that was a huge positive. But the concern there was, hey, we are not having enough time to really learn in our schools and in our departments. What was happening was, yes, they have faculty meetings, but 6 of the days a year, the district used to have professional development,
Mhm.
and they have a desire to learn at their schools and their departments. So we what let's brainstorm. What could we do? What would be beneficial? And where we landed was 4 of the days are strictly for the schools and departments. They get to do what they need to do for their employees at their sites, and the district only has 2 days now. And it's fine. It just makes it so that on those 2 district days, we make sure that we are highly prepared and that we're providing the trainings that are um, super important for us to give to everybody. But other than that, they now get to do most of their professional development at their school and their departments. So those are pretty easy little tweaks that you can do, but it's shown us that employees really appreciate that process. Um, we used to hire about 100 teachers every year over the summer. We've been hiring now about 34 to 30 teachers over the summer. So when you look at the retention and the results, we do believe we are helping to honor our employees with that work life integration, but it's all about employee voice. We cannot pretend that we know what they need.
That's great. And last question, we all know that we have always like funding barriers. How do you work with this?
Yeah, with the funding,
Yeah.
that can be tricky, right? Like with paid time off. So some things that come about may need to be negotiated if you're in a negotiating state, but it's looking at the opportunities. What is it going to cost and can we afford it? But if we can't afford it, then what are the other solutions? We can't, like with paid time off. We were thinking that employees were going to cost us more than 500,000 a year in the cost of substitutes. Well, that didn't happen, but we did budget for it in case it happened.
Mm-hmm.
When it didn't, and now we're in our third year with paid time off, now we have a good cycle, a good system. The money's there. It's not a worry. Um, if we're looking at pay raises or adding leave for some of the employee groups, that comes at a cost. But it's really working with our school board. It's really working with our business administrator and talking through what is it the employees need and why. Um, the power with co-designing of solutions, when you're meeting with those employees and you're coming up with these ideas, You don't have to decide right then, right? Nobody's going to say, here's our stamp of approval during this meeting. No, this is brainstorming. What are all of those options? And let's rank them. If money's not a barrier, what is our thing? But money we know is a barrier. So also, what's our backup? Let's shoot for this, and what's our backup?
Mhm.
So thinking through those pieces as well as you're looking at these solutions. And employees understand it. When you're talking with your employees, they get it. They know they're in education and we're not, getting millions and millions just coming in that we can do anything with, but it's the power of communication. And then the power of what are the options out there. Let's talk expensive, let's talk backup plans. But it's the employees that are coming up with those, and then they have the buy-in. They can talk with their colleagues. We still communicate, here's what came out of it, but you have a lot of employees that are bought into it because they're the ones that created it.
Great. So, Jessica, I
Yes.
want to thank you for sitting with us today. It was great talking to you.
Nice talking to you too. I could talk about employees and how to keep them for days because it's
Well,
powerful and exciting when it works.
well, maybe we can do this again.
That would be great.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Okay, thanks.